Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Howdy there, daylight burners. How we feeling today? Got another really good episode for you. Mr. Scott Hall coming back on the show. And we talked a lot more cowboy stories. And we ran a little bit long because we were just having a good time. And honestly, we didn't even start recording for about 30 minutes. We just got to bullshit and then we're having a whale of a good time. And I kind of lost track of time. And we're like, oh, we need to probably get going here. So anyhow, this was a fun one. So without further ado, Scott Hall, back to the show.
So Matt, I guess we probably ought to start back a little bit earlier in my childhood to what was my beginning was
Okay.
I had a little mare that my stepfather bought for me because my first horse he sold so that he could purchase a ranch.
Okay.
Basically, he sold a bunch of stuff, and that little mare of mine was part of what went into buying the place. And he says, well, I'll pay you back, you know. And so after he got the place bought in Downey, he decided he was going to pay me back. And so he went to the sale yard, and there was a little blue roan mare about 14 hands tall. And she was kind of round built. She was the true blue roan. She had a black face, black mane, black legs, black tail, and her body was white.
Okay.
Super, super cool looking. You know, just a little bit of dapple in that coat, so she was really pretty. And
Nice.
when they took her through that sale ring, the guy he climbed up on her back and he rode her around for just a minute, and we said, well, looks like she's broken us. So we took her home, and we got her out the pasture there. We didn't have any corrals put up yet. And my stepdad says to me, well, you want to jump on and try her out? And we hadn't even asked her to lead around in a circle, you know. All we'd seen was just a little seen her in a little old halter and lead rope. And that's how they rode her through the ring, was a halter and lead rope bareback. And so you think, well, she's kind of broke-ish, you know. So I says, no, I ain't climbing on her. Being the coward that I was, so my brother, he says, well, I'll get on her, you know. So Chad, he hops up on her, and we had a little snaffle bit set up on her, and threw a saddle on her, and he swung a leg over. He's about 13 years old when this happened, and she took off running. And she ran about 100 yards, and she kind of humped up a little bit, but he picked up on them reins and spun her around, and she come running back to us, and she just stopped right at us. And just kind of a runaway, but not, you know.
Yeah.
So my brother, he hurries and bails off of her, and that was enough for me to know that she wasn't just a raw bronc, even though we'd seen her in the show pen, you know, or the auction pen.
Yeah.
So, anywho, me and that little mare, we took off after that. We had a lot of country out there in Downey, Idaho that didn't have any fences. And so you could go out and jog. You could go out and jog and ride through the hills and through the creek bottoms and just pretty much sagebrush everywhere and a lot of dry farm and hills and mountains. And so that's where I had to play. And so I could go up through there and bounce around the creek bottoms and what have you. And that's kind of how I learned how to get along with a horse, because she did have a glitch. She had really bad mutton withers, which is where they're shaped like a 55-gallon drum, instead of having a nice place to put your saddle. So she would get heading downhill, and as soon as she'd head downhill a little bit, well, I'm sure that the little swell fork saddle that I rode as a kid would kind of press on those not so much withers and be uncomfortable, and pretty quick she'd be bucking. And,
shit.
She could buck just a little better than I could ride. And so she'd take 4, 5, 6 jumps, and she'd dump me, and I'd climb back on and go again. And this happened for the first year that I rode that mare. And my mom says, well, do you want to be in 4-H, And I really wanted to be in 4-H and show with horses, and I wanted anything to do with horses. And so I went ahead and started getting her ready to show. And, of course, my dad, he had done a little showing of horses, and he coached me a little bit on what I needed to do. But he was an absentee father. He was gone doing his own thing. And so I just did everything that my uncle and my dad told me to do. And, of course, I was on my own. They had told me, they said, put her in a snaffle bit, just a regular old O-ring snaffle bit. So that's what I rode her in. And I'd ride up and down those creek bottoms, and I would use each turn in that creek bottom as a opportunity to kind of teach her the neck rein, because she'd be looking around the corner. I'd just lay that rein on her neck without really pulling on her face. And pretty quick, she started the neck rein a little bit. And I had learned how to stop a horse a little, and been learning how to lope circles, and getting those horses to handle. And I'll tell you, I didn't do too bad on her after I started showing her. I ended up winning some grand champion shows, and ended up winning a lot of blue ribbons on her. So even though she would buck once in a while, she was still handling pretty nice. And gosh, I was really happy with how she was doing. One time I was at the state fair showing her. I was in the bareback equitation, and I'd already shown her in the reining deal. And we made about one circle around the pen, and she humped up and started bucking. Just real straight up and down, real jump and kick like, and she made it about 4 jumps, and I got her to shut down. She didn't turn either way, and I didn't guide her either direction. I just kind of kept picking up on her face until she quit bucking, and then we went back to bareback equitation. She never bucked me off or nothing. But
that's funny.
Anyway, so she and I, we were getting along pretty good. At least I think we were, even though she'd try to buck me off once in a while. And I was getting better at getting by her, You know how it goes.
Yeah.
You start to learn how to figure that stuff out. And, I think I was about 13, 14 years old. My mother knew that I was very interested in moving on with my horsemanship, so she bought me a Boselle. And it had a cotton tardy on it, and a little headstall, little leather headstall. And it was a pretty well-made Boselle. She didn't buy me a piece of junk. I mean, it didn't have any sharp tooth to it. The braiding was all pretty fine, It was a nice-looking Boselle. And so it was something I could be proud to ride. And I was dang sure going to put it to use. So one day after Christmas, I think it was like the 1st of January, right around there. Still had a few days left of Christmas vacation. Folks were gone to work. My brother was in the house hanging out. He liked to play his guitar and watch TV. And I liked to be a horseback. So I was out there in the bitter cold, and it was a real sunshiny day. And I was kind of out on the feed ground, and it was hard and slick. You know how that snow packed down. There was a few cow patties frozen here and there. And I'm in this Boselle on my blue mare, just riding out through there, and I'm asking her to turn left, turn right. And when I would pick up on those reins, of course, all she knew was handling in a halter, and a snaffle bit, of course. Well, I pulled on that hackamore, and I got a whole lot of nothing. And I pulled on it some more, but I didn't give a slack and a jerk. I just kept pulling. And she kind of whirled to the left, and this trail that went from the haystack up to the feed ground was a big L, about a half a mile long. So you'd go down the fence line, and then you'd come out into the open country of the feed grounds, and that's where I was. Well, she just was running back to where, and it only took her a few seconds to get into a full gallop. And, we were in a runaway, just like that. And she's heading back the way we came. Well, like I say, it's kind of shaped like an L, and she come around that first corner, and she slid a little bit, and something I didn't mention about her was she was a very, very sure-footed mare. And all I rode her in was the foothills around there, you know. And I wasn't too worried about her falling, and I had a pretty good seat for a kid. And as she come around there, you could see ice a-flying everywhere, and she's barefoot. And we come around the next corner to head straight for the haystack, and that corner had a big, it was a big railroad tie pole, and then the other side of it was just a barbed wire fence, and she went sliding around there, and this time I thought she was going to lose her feet, because she was at a full tilt, and she slid for probably about 15 feet before she got her feet to where she could get running again, and I was still in the middle of her, and I'm still hauling on that old Bozell, just pulling back as hard as I can, and I'm getting nothing. And I kind of let up a little bit, you know, and I pulled on it again, and I still got nothing, and she just got her nose poked out as hard as she can go, and she's heading straight for the haystack. Well, on the side of the haystack, there was a road that went straight out to the main road, and it divided like a little heifer pasture off from everything else. And so you go along, you had the haystack on your left, and then you had this barbed wire fence on your right, and then there was a hog wire and barbed wire fence stretched across that. And she's running straight at that. And we're going just as hard as she can go. And I mean, she could carry the mail now, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to hit that fence, and it's going to be the death of us. And I could see my light flashing before my eyes. I'm like, she is going to flip, you know. And, we're just trucking along. This is all icy snow, all right? And she's probably about 25 yards from that fence, and she ain't slowed up, and I haven't got her to slow up at all. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to die. And she slides, she gets about 10 feet from it and slides up to it, and you could hear that fence stretch as it went up underneath her legs and her neck. Just, you could hear the freaking post start to pop. And I was like, oh my God, here we go, I'm dead. And it stopped her. It was like a fishing net that caught her and stopped her.
Yeah.
And it kind of pushed her back a little bit, and she paused for just a half a second before she was going to whirl again, and I bailed off. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just lived through that. And that was my first experience with a Bozell.
Oh man.
Anyway, that was probably my most exciting story to do with a Bozell, and I was determined after that to learn how to use it. Of course, I called Dad, and I called my Uncle Kenny, and I was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? This is not working out like it's supposed to, you know. And, of course, they started telling me how to use it. But then of course, Daddy says, well, you need to get Ed Cannell's books. And so I started reading up on Ed Cannell's books and got a lot more confidence and a lot more knowledge. But I never did put a Bozell back on that mare.
Yeah.
I decided that wasn't the right thing to do for her.
You're probably right on that.
Let's see. There was another little story about that blue mare. I had been riding, showing those horses for a while, and my parents decided that since I was getting about 5'11", that a 14-hand tall blue roan mare didn't look right underneath me. And so they said, well, you got a little bit of money set aside. Why don't you just go and buy you another horse? And so we bought me a big, nice sorrel gelding from a lady up in Fort Hall. This horse was kind of a racehorse bred outfit, and I'd been riding saddle bronc horses a little bit and starting to learn how to ride horses. And, I decided I was going to take these two horses one day because my stepdad and my uncle, not my stepdad, my dad and my uncle had been telling me stories about how you could take a regular saddle horse and buck them out. So I kept my mouth shut about all this, and I told my buddy Casey Robinson, I said, hey, let's go buck these horses out. So we trotted all the way from my place into Downey, which is about 3-4 miles, And
okay.
we loaded these two horses up in the buck and chute. And I put a halter on that mare, and my regular bronc outfit, put that on the mare.
Mm-hmm.
I had both of them in the chute, and keep in mind the big sorrel horse I had actually been to state on showing him, and I had won state showing him in a snaffle bit. So he was a pretty handy son buck too. He wasn't no slouch.
Yeah,
could run like the wind, man. He was a fast old gelding too. Lots of fun to ride. Big length thing. I even have pictures of showing him at the state fair, and this was before I took him and bucked him out. so I get him put in the chute, and I didn't think much about him, but I thought, I think I can ride this mare. I put my bronc saddle on her, and I cracked out of there, and she just jumped and kicked nice, just like a nice saddle broke horse. And I got tapped off on her and was spurring her real good, Worked out pretty good. My buddy, he rode up there and helped me off of her, and he climbed on her and he went for a ride on her, So I said, well, we probably ought to give her a break and we'll ride this little sorrel horse and see if he can buck. So I put my bronc saddle on him, and he was a good 2 hands taller than that mare. He was big.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, he's going to be a pretty good bronc ride, So we go out there, and 2 jumps out. I mean, he just comes apart. And I mean, flat buck me off. I mean, just like that. I was flat on the ground, and my head was ringing. I was like, oh my God.
Bucked you off like a fat girl, huh?
Oh my gosh, it was ugly.
Oh man.
Oh. And then of course,
I just to piggyback on that, when I moved back from Montana, I graduated college and I moved up to Montana and worked on a pretty big ranch up there, and then I decided it was too cold for this flatlander, and I moved back home, and I was riding colts for a buddy of my dad's, and he was I think he was a Little Britches world champion in high school, and then he started riding pro shows, and he did okay, but never really kind of made it big. But he started riding pickup horses, and then he started breeding pickup horses. And well, I was riding colts for him, and he had several little kind of cowbred fillies that he was riding for somebody and I got on them, and they'd jump and kick a little bit, but they didn't have much buck to them. And so I got to where I was feeling pretty confident. You know how you are when you're 24, 25 years old, full of piss and vinegar, and think you kind of know everything. And so he grabbed this, I think she was a 6-year-old mare, and she was a thoroughbred Percheron cross. And he said, all right, now get on her, and he said, now keep her head because she will buck a little bit. I said, okay, no problem. So I get her, I got her head sucked up pretty good, and she's got a big old ball in her back, but she never did fire initially, and so I kept her pretty collected, and we got to running around that round pen a little bit, got her sweating, and she started licking her lips, and we just had her in a little snaffle bit. And she was licking her lips, and she had stopped to take shit, and started to act like she was ready to do some learning. And that old bitch, as soon as I let her have her head, she buried her head, and I went about 5 or 6 jumps, and I'd never been on something that bucked that hard before. And I lasted about 5, 6 jumps, and then she threatened me on the ground. And so I thought, all right, I got your number now. And so I get back up on her, and we go wheeling around the round pen a little bit more, and same thing. She had a little ball in her back, and then we get her a little more lubricated, and she starts acting kind of nice. And all right, well, so this time she's really ready to learn, and I give her head a little bit, and same thing. Down her head goes, and of course she's got a big old thick neck being a Percheron cross, and those big of horses, once they get their head sucked down, you ain't getting it back. And so off we went, and I don't think I made it quite as long this time. I think she about 3 or 4 jumped me at that point, and then I got pissed. I was prideful, and of course, Doc, the guy I was riding for, the whole time, every time I get back on him, another one of his old bronc riding buddies would show up, and and he had this really cool round pin. It was railroad ties and tuba 12s, and it was all slanted outward, just really, really well done. And they're all sitting on top of this round pin, and of course, giving me all sorts of hell every time they hit the ground. So my pride's a little hurt. I've been bucked off twice, and this is the first horse that's ever thrown me more than one time. And so I am madder than a wet hen. And I go back on her, and we just go to zipping around that round pin. I'm getting her as fast as she can go, and then I'm yanking her head around into the fence, so she's sliding down and wheeling back around the other way, and then pretty soon, she's lathered up out the ass crack and just, really looks like I've done a number on her. And I kind of cooled off a little bit, and I was starting to feel a little bit bad for her, and Doc must had the same feeling, because he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, I think she's probably good, Doc." And he had a bunch of lead ropes hanging all over that round pin, so I rode up to one of those lead ropes, and I go to step off, and right as my right leg kind of gets parallel to the ground, she unloads me, and so I hear. I don't remember much of it, but Doc, when I kind of come to, see, I'd been home from Montana for about pretty close to a month, but after I hit the ground and kind of picked myself up out of the heap, I was pretty sure that I was still on my way back from Montana, and for some reason I had stopped in La Junta, Colorado to visit Doc, which made no sense at all if you knew the story, but I was convinced that I had detoured out of my way and went through La Junta, Colorado on my way back home from Big Sandy, Montana, to see Doc, who, and apparently I was a little concussed. And I got back on her one more time, and I never let her really have her head, and I got along okay with her, but she pretty well had me buffaloed, and I got humbled up real quick like. But Doc said, "Well, your head wasn't the first thing to hit." And I said, "No." He said, "No, it was your back, but don't worry, your head was right behind it."
Dang.
And then I guess one of his bronc riding buddies, he kind of watched it all, and he said, "Yeah, he had a little bounce to him initially, but he traded it all for splat." And so that was probably one of the low points of my bronc stomping career. I got humbled by that mare pretty good, but it was a good learning experience, I guess.
This episode of Burning Daylight is brought to you by Chase Gibson and Rockin' G Cutlery. I found out about Chase through my buddy Thaddeus down in Alabama. He liked one of my posts and followed me on Instagram. I guess Thaddeus had told him about the show, and I got to looking through his page, and this guy makes some really awesome knives. And so we got to talking back and forth, and now he's a sponsor of the show, and I'm really happy about that. So a little bit about him. He does this kind of on the side, but I think sounds like he really enjoys doing it. But it's all handmade, hand forged, made with U.S. steel, all American made, handmade, hand forged products, and it's all done old school way. The only power tool he uses is a belt grinder. Everything else is just a hammer and a forge. And he makes Damascus blades. He makes regular steel blades. Uses different materials on on the handles, and they're all custom orders, so he can make it exactly how you like it. He's got a bull cutter that he's making for me on the way, so I can't wait to see it. And yeah, go check him out. He's rockin.g.cutlery on Instagram and rockin.g cutlery on Facebook. Go give him a look, and if you need a new blade, give him a shout. I'm sure he'd be happy to make one for you. So thanks, Chase, for sponsoring the show, and go check him out, Rockin' G Cutlery.
You know, Matt, over the years, there was some of those horses that were pretty tricky to get around, you know, and I managed to work for a guy that was pretty good at training up those colts. Of course, riding on the Spanish ranch, I'd gotten on a lot of cranky horses, and I'll tell you, all that really did for me is it made me alley around horses. Because a lot of them were treacherous because they were abused, so to speak, or they were let get too old, and they had been handled by guys that really didn't know anything about starting colts. They were just cowboys, you know. One of them horses, his name was Bomber, and I'll tell you later why they named him what they did. But you know how they are in those bigger outfits. I mean, they'll name those horses all sorts of stupid names, and it always has a little bit to do with what's happened when they were starting those colts. And you know, I had a colt named Nightmare that I rode, and one that was Bomber, and another one that was, what'd they call him? I want to say it was King Kong. And, you know, just odd names like that, and they all had earned their names. And of course, that Spanish ranch had a lot of big thoroughbred kind of horses, and big, stout kind of geldings that we rode. And one of them, like I said, his name was Bomber, and the boss he'd felt me out pretty good, and he had been, I guess, figured I could get along with most any of these horses. And I put Bomber in the corral, and I started doing what I do with these colts, which is a lot of the Ray Hunt kind of stuff. That was something that I studied growing up, and I'd spent hours and hours and hours studying it, and I'd actually started quite a few colts that way and had a lot of luck. So working out there to the span, that paid off with a lot of those colts, and it was working really well with Bomber. And I climbed on him and started riding him, and he was pretty handy, you know. And he seemed to be a pretty dang genuine horse. He wasn't ornery, and he wasn't scared, you know. And I thought, man, what a nice little gelding. Why in the world did they call him Bomber? Whatever, you know. Well, one day, me and about 3 other cowboys were told about lunchtime or so. They're like, go bring in a butcher cow. And so we trot out, and the wind is kind of blowing in our faces. No, that's not right. The wind was blowing to our backs as we rode out to get the butcher cow. And I had a kind of a newer saddle that my aunt had made. My aunt's a saddle maker from McCammon. That's my wife. And I got this new buggy, and it was fitting these horses pretty good, and I liked the way it fit me. It had about a 6-inch tall cantle on it, and it was a Wade saddle, and I ride about a 16-inch seat, and so it fit me perfect. It was new rough out, so that was real nice, you know.
Oh yeah, you get a hold of something there.
Yeah, and I hadn't got the strings all tied up yet, but I didn't really think much of it, you know. So we get to the end where this butcher cow's at, and we kind of go make a little bit of a left-hand turn to take her back to where they butcher these cows. And it's about, I want to say, it's got to be 200 yards, 300 yards, something like that, from one end of that pasture to the other. And he grabs his ass, and I mean blows up. And it took every bit of salt that this cowboy has to stay in the middle. And every single jump, my ass was a foot and a half out of the saddle. And I'd come down in the middle of them, and I just kept reaching forward with my feet, you know, just like you do on any bronc.
Oh, yeah.
And I kept a hold of that rope strap, and my aunt had put me a pretty stout rope strap on there, because I told her, I said, I have to ride colts on this Spanish ranch, and I need something that'll hold up to me grabbing leather, you know. And,
oh, yeah.
This buddy of mine, he kept yelling at me. He's like, pull him around. And I couldn't get him to budge. I mean, he's a big stout colt, probably about, I'm guessing he was 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And, yeah, he was every bit of 16 hands, and he was stout. And there was no pulling this horse's face around.
Yeah.
Well, he just keeps it going, and my buddy, he rides up, and he starts quirting him on the head. And he can't get him to shut down. We finally make it to back where this butcher barn is at. And it's kind of boggy through there, you know, and he finally quits. And we swap ends, and he just popped his head up, and everything was okay. And I was like, what the hell, you know? And of course, my adrenaline was through the roof, and I was like, what has gotten into his craw? He's always been so good, you know? Well, yeah. We go back to get this butcher cow again. And I'm not kidding you, as soon as we turn the corner, bang, he goes to bucking again. Like, oh my gosh. This time he only went about 3 or 4 jumps. And then my buddy rode in, quirted him on the head, and he stopped. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, shit. So I stepped off, and after he quit bucking, I stepped off, and I looked around, and I see them strings sitting on his ass.
Oh.
That was all it took. Those strings were on his ass, and that was too much, you know. So I tied up my strings and went about our business, and he was good after that.
That's funny. God. You know, I had a question for my dad one time. I think I was 11, 12 years old, something like that, and I always liked, of course, you know, we all rode double rig saddles, usually swell fork, and you'd see some wades and slick fork saddles, but for the most part, on, you know, high plains where I grew up, it was you rode kind of an association style tree with about a 3.5 inch cantle. And a lot of, a flat seat, but, as you know, those saddles sit different. So you're kind of locked in on those ranch rigs. The team ropers are a little different, but, the ranch rigs, it kind of locks you in. So even though it's not a real, deep seat, you've got a good seat. And of course, then you got a set of swells in front of you so you can get your thighs underneath when something busts in two. And I always see those cowboys that tuck their saddle strings into that D-ring on their back cinch, and I always thought it looked cool, but I asked my dad what that was for. Of course, he's got a big long winding bullshit story about basically the same thing. You don't want those strings slapping them on the ass and getting bucked off on your head. But of course, it took him about 30 minutes to tell that story. Wind here, wind there, backtrack a little bit, and probably only about 30% of it was true. But it was, but I'd always wondered. I'd been around horses for 3 or 4 years at that point, and I'd seen that, and I was just always curious. But I liked how it looked. But like I said before, there's always a purpose behind something. Most people don't just do stuff on a lark, and so that's the same. He told me kind of a similar story about a broke horse, and it wasn't the saddle strings on his ass. Somebody behind him was talking to him, and they were on this trail ride, and of course, like I've mentioned before, when I talk about my dad's trail rides, it's not like a dude ranch where you go in a single file line and at a walk for about 2 miles and then come back to the ranch. We'd catch a long trot and cover about at least 20 miles a day, and so you had some really sore people by the time it was all said and done. But somebody was talking to him, and he had turned around to look at him to respond, and he'd just put his hand on that old horse's ass, and just almost got bucked off in front of all of his pilgrims. And so he made sure to never do that again. And of course he sacked that old horse out just, at every chance he got, he'd rub something on that horse's ass until you got to where you could put an anvil on his ass and he wouldn't care. But he just about got embarrassed in front of his herd of pilgrims, and he decided that wasn't going to happen again.
Yeah. I had a similar experience in front of a cowboy that I had a lot of respect for. He wasn't just a cowboy, he was a ranch manager. Guy by the name of Merv Takis. And some people will have heard of this guy. He was known
I've actually heard that name.
He was known to be pretty ornery and, couldn't really talk without cussing kind of guy. And he and Connie Satterthwaite were pretty good friends. Merv sure didn't want anything to do with the Spanish ranch, but a lot of times he didn't have a choice because Squaw Valley was a part of that Ellison Ranching Company. He would have to bring yearlings from Squaw Valley over to the town area of Tuscarora. And I was with him one time when we had to go up there, and we were picking up all these yearlings to take back to the Spanish ranch. And of course, I was supposed to be the night caver. That's what I generally did. But this time they needed a little extra help, and I was riding with Connie. And we were visiting as we were going, and she says, you don't want to get it off to the side of the road here because there's a lot of old mines, and your horse could fall in one. And she said drunks fall in them sometimes and die. She says it's pretty dangerous. Just kind of watch your step. And we get up to these corrals where we're supposed to meet Merv and the yearlings, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing. We were kind of holding things up, and I was just facing forward, paying attention to what was going on in front of me, and Merv and Connie were behind me, I thought, about 30 feet, visiting on their horses. And I was just pretty proud to be in the presence of somebody like Merv, And I had this little horse that they had nicknamed Merv. No, they didn't nickname him. They named him Merv. And so I'm sitting on a horse named Merv, and he was a kind of a good-looking little Palomino horse. He wasn't real big. He was probably about 14 and a half, 15 hands. And he wasn't a real stout animal. He probably weighed in about 1,000 pounds, maybe 1,100 at the most. And he was getting really handy. I'd been riding him in a Bozell, and I, of course, like I say, that was my thing. I wanted to ride everything in a Bozell that I could to really get handy with it. And this horse was coming along. I was really happy with it. And we're just sitting there nice and quiet, pretty quick. Merv bogs his head and goes to bucking, and I mean jumping straight in the air. From quiet spitting to bucking hard, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the hell? It's like somebody shot a gun underneath me. And I can hear old Merv in the background like, don't pull on him, Scott! Don't pull on him! And I was like, what? So I'm pitching the horse's head as much as he can because I'm thinking he's talking about the Bozell. He don't want me screwing up all this Bozell work,
Yeah.
I think what he was talking about is don't grab your rope, just sit.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, that horse had me from the first jump. He put me dang near in the saddle horn the first jump, and I didn't have any swells. I didn't have any buck rolls or nothing. There's no front end on that new saddle.
Yeah.
And I caught it on my leg the first jump, and then the second jump, I was sitting on his mane. And, so by the third jump, he just catapulted me, because when he come down, his neck was just like a launch pad, and he shot me way out in the dirt.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of left sitting there. I was like, what in the hell happened? And I can't help but wonder if Merv didn't do something to that horse, because that horse never did stuff like that. It was just crazy. But anyway, that old Merv, he was kind of questionable anyways. Who knows what he is right there. But him and Connie just sit there laughing. So I thought maybe he pulled something,
Oh man, I've had that happen where somebody will maybe not put a burr under your saddle pad, but they'll, you know, throw a rock or just conveniently shed their coat when they're right in front of your horse's face. And, you know, I shared a video on Facebook the other day, and it was some performance horse deal, and this guy had his kid on a little colt, a little paint horse, and they're in like an indoor round pen type deal, it looked like, and the head trainer guy, or the main guy, he's talking to the camera, and he's got his, I think it's his kid in the background on this colt, and then he just like real casually, as he's still talking, just picks up this tarp and chucks it onto the middle of that round pen, and sure enough, that old colt goes to bucking, and I think, if I remember right, the kid stuck him pretty good, but, you know, was not expecting it at all, and didn't have much of a seat to start with, but, you know, salvaged it, and that old man, I've never seen anybody so tickled in their life at what had just happened, and it just reminded me of some of the stuff my dad would pull. You know, I think the first time I think I was 11 or 12, something like that, and I was on one of these colts, and I'd rode a bunch at the end of the lunge line on him, and that was the part I liked the least. You know, my dad would be out there lunging him around, and, you know, all you've got is the saddle horn. You don't have any reins to hold on to. You know, you really learn how to ride that way, but I hated it, and but we put him in a hackamore, and I was trying to get him to just take a step back. That was all I was wanting to do. It was just I wasn't even asking him to tip his nose. I was just any movement backwards was all I was looking for. And that old horse reared straight up, and of course I didn't know what to do, and I hauled back on the reins, and I'm grabbing the horn, and then he sat back down, and my dad kind of looks over and goes, "Huh, well, that worked pretty good. Let's do that again next time." And so now I got some confidence under my belt, and I'm feeling really good about life. And go kind of zipping this horse around the corral, and I'm the same thing. I get him stopped, and I'm asking him to take a step back, and he rears up again, and so I kind of slide my hand up that rein, and I just give him a good old yank, you know, as much as I could I was a pretty little fella back then. I don't think I broke 100 pounds till I was 8th grade. But so I reach up and give a yank on his old face, and that horse came right over on top of me. You know, I was able to slide off the side, but my old man, he was right there laughing, but he, you know, had a hand out waiting to pull me up, and he goes, "Yeah, that's why you never pull on their face when they rear up. Kick them in the flank and they'll come back down." Well, you could have just said that instead of letting a horse flip over on top of me, but, you know, I've never done it since, so it worked. It was effective, I guess. It was kind of a dick move, some people might say, but it was effective.
You know, I had a little yellow horse. Well, we still own him. He's still over there in McCammon, Idaho. It's only been just maybe 5 years ago. I was riding bucking horses still, and I was working up out of Mackey on what they call Bear Creek. And I had two horses up there that were kind of cranky. One was the little yellow horse, and the other one was a little bay horse that, man, he was cool looking, but he needed to have a job for a living, or else he'd buck quite a bit. And yeah, the yellow horse, he could buck pretty hard. He was just nothing but stout. I mean, he was about 14 and a half hands, and I mean thick and juicy, and man, he could buck hard. Everybody in my family knows that, you know, if he gets to going, you better get him shut down, because he's going to fart you off, you know. So,
yeah, just gets stronger as he goes.
Yeah, so I rode him in a Bozell for years and years. And that particular day, he, you know, a day or two before that, he had thrown a fit, and I kind of bounced my Bozell off of his nose, and he shut down. Well, this time he was feeling good again, and as soon as I started to leave them other horses, he bowed up and blew his cork and starts to bucking, and I reached up with that Bozell, and I gave him a whack on the end of the nose with it, you know, and he kind of threw his head up a little bit, but he kept it bucking. I whacked him again with it, and when I say whack, I mean I'd take all the slack and put it in the rein, and then I'd reach out and hit to the left-hand side as far over as my hand could reach so that it would really bang the side of his face. You know, scratch up. I didn't want to scratch up what makes him handle. I just wanted it to slap the side of his nose to get his attention. And it worked. He made about 4 or 5 jumps, and I mean, it was taking me all I could do to get by him, and I got him shut down. I was like, oh man, thank God, you know. Anyway, it was a couple days after that. I was like, well, the hell with riding that yellow horse. I don't need to go in any more battles, you know. And I've been riding this bay horse, and he's doing pretty good. And my wife and kids are there, you know. I'm like, well, I got to go and check these cows, and then we'll head over to the rodeo where I was entered up. So, you know what? I don't think it was a couple days. I think it was that day. I think I turned around and put that yellow horse away and grabbed the bay horse. Because I don't remember any time passing before I went to that rodeo. Anywho, so I grabbed this bay horse, and I saddle him up, and he is humped up as can be. And he's been the kind of horse that every time you saddle him, there's some kind of a battle. Whether it's pulling back, whether it's kicking at you, or humping up and bucking with an empty saddle, or just giving you a plain old bronc ride. I mean, he's always got to throw some kind of little fit. And, you know, it was just his way. And so I stepped on him, and he went to bucking, and he would buck really high, but he didn't kick. He'd just jump, you know. And so we're jumping around there, and I can't, even though I'm bouncing that Bozell off his nose, I can't get any attention from him. And he crashes into the barbed wire fence and decides to buck the other direction, so he goes bucking towards my wife's car, and I kept bouncing off of that face of his until I got him to kind of change direction a little bit. And he swaps around 180 degrees, and he bucks right into my stack of firewood. It's about 4 feet tall and about 6 feet wide, you know. It's just thrown there. It's not stacked, you know, organized. It's just a big pile of fire. He lands in the frickin' firewood, swaps ends, and he goes to bucking out there through the brush a little ways, and I was like, holy smokes, I'm going to wear myself out before I even step on a bronc today, you know. Then we go out and we move cows, and everything is good, you know. Everything is golden. I get back home, and it's time to go ride at the rodeo over in Arco. And so I've had a pretty good warm-up for the day, you know. 2 bucking horses ready to go to the rodeo. And so I get over there, and I've got this big, nice, bally bay horse drawed from Hogan's. And I'm thinking, well, hopefully he really lines out and bucks. And I says to Mindy, because she's kind of the shoot boss, I says, what's he do, Mindy? And she says, I can't remember anything that stands out. And I said, well, what kind of rein should I pull on him? She says, gosh, you know, I don't even know. She says, just pull an average on him and hope it works out, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, good help you are, you know.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I pull an average on him, and I stuck it in his, I stuck the rein in his ring on there like you're supposed to do, and I get everything measured up, and I get down on this horse when it's my turn to go, and he comes out, and this son of a gun keeps rearing up and jumping in the air instead of just lining out and bucking like what she thought that he would do. He just hang back, and he'd jump straight in the air, and then he'd land, and then he'd rear back and jump straight in the air. I was like, what the hell, you know? And then he finally lined out and started bucking, and I made a halfway decent spur ride on him, you know, and got done. I think I scored like 70 or something like that on him, and I was like, well, that'll have to do, because as good as I can do for today. And
Yeah.
ended up winning that show. I was pretty ticked
nice.
about that crazy little bucking horse, But that was towards the end of my bronc riding career. After that, I climbed on a few more, but I kept having issues with my saddle, and then my back started to bother me, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to call it good and swear off these bucking horses before I'm a crippled old man at all at 38 years old,
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I never really got into to riding bucking horses in the rodeos. I did a few when I was younger. I was always on my dad's ranch rodeo team, when he was still doing it, but he had a bunch of old farts on his team, and so they would have me on just to ride the bucking horse. And I did okay. I think I came in second or third a couple times, but I never won any of them. But I did all right. But I just it was one of those things that it didn't appeal to me all that much. And I don't know if I was too much of a chicken shit or what, but it just didn't really appeal to me doing it. So I never really got into it. And I had several buddies that always thought I should have, and I just wasn't my deal, I didn't mind riding the colts at bucks, but I wasn't a bucking horse rider, I guess.
Wasn't looking for a fight, huh? Yeah.
No, that's the thing is. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Matt, over the years, I started to realize that I wasn't looking for a fight riding them bucking horses, and I sure as heck wasn't brave, But,
yeah.
I had learned that there was a whole bunch of guys out there riding that didn't know what they were doing. And at 38 years old, I'd been on enough bucking horses over my life, and there was a time or two when I had opportunities to climb on bucking horses when I was out cowboying. And so I'd get on those bucking horses and I'd decide, you know what, I can still do this. And, when you're cowboying for a living, you're on a horse all the time. And so it's something that comes pretty natural to you when a horse goes to bucking, and you've ridden saddle broncs before. You learn how to get in time, and it's just good practice being on a saddle horse. And that's something that I've tried to convince some of these younger bronc riders that, if you'll just spend some time on a saddle horse, instead of always wanting to climb on bucking horses all the time, because you learn to move with that horse when you're riding him around just every day, cross. You still there, Matt?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I'm so silent that I thought that I lost you.
Oh, no problem. I agree with you. It's just, the more time you spend in the saddle, the stickier you get. And like you said, it's just you learn how to move with the horse. And yeah, it's all about rhythm. I found that out fairly early on, because if you can't sit a long trot without posting, you're not going to be able to ride for more than 5-6 miles before you're just played out for the day. If you got to post every time you catch a trot, boy, you're going to be just plumb wore out.
Well, and there's little things too that I learned about riding about riding horses that really paid off riding broncs. And that was like when a horse jumps a ditch, it's not near as hard on you or the horse if you'll be in time with him when he goes to jump. And,
oh, yeah.
Like old Gary LeFew, when he's teaching guys to ride bulls, he would put them on a jumping horse. And that's how he taught them to ride bulls. And I always would do stuff like that as a kid. When I was riding up and down through the hills and valleys right there in Downey, Idaho, every time I'd cross a creek and my horse would jump, I'd make sure I was in the front end when he hit the ground, And no, I didn't have my feet in their shoulders, because a saddle isn't built to do that. But once in a while, I'd go throw my bronc saddle on my saddle horses, and I'd go riding through the sagebrush, and they'd duck and dive and dodge the sagebrush, because we had big sagebrush. We didn't have any trees, but we had a lot of big sagebrush around. And so
yeah,
that was something that really helped me to get in the middle of those horses, and jumping creeks and ditches and stuff like that really helped me to learn to time my feet so that when that horse hit the ground, my feet were in his front end. And of course, then I decided to go to bronc riding school and stuff like that, which that sort of stuff helps. But it really, really pays off for a guy to be in the middle of a horse all the time. Anyway,
oh, yeah.
Moving on with our storytelling, I was going to tell you about a kid that I knew when I was in college. We had went to a branding one time. This is on a whole different note. We'd been branding calves all morning, and my buddy, Travis Jacobson, he's like, yeah, we need some help, and we need to go doctor these calves for this guy now that we're done branding calves. And so I was like, oh, sure, it's been a while since I got to do any doctoring, and I had just come back from that Spanish ranch, and I was in cow school over there at Rexburg, and I was like, heck yeah, let's go rope something, And so we doctored 3 or 4 head of calves, and I had told Travis's younger brother, I said, if you lose your rope, you owe us all a 6-pack of soda pop,
Oh, yeah.
6-pack of beer, but we were all Mormon kids back then, so we didn't drink any beer. We just drank soda pop, So,
yeah.
Anyway, this kid ropes a calf, and he didn't take his turns. And that calf went back to his right, and just as that kid was twisting around in his saddle, he did turn loose of that rope. And the next thing I know, he's stretched way out and falls off of his horse backwards. So the horse is going forward and he's going backward with that calf, and he flops on the ground and his right foot is still in the stirrup. And that horse kind of jumped forward. And I mean, I wasn't 10 feet from this kid, And that horse jumped forward and took to running. And this is Black Rock country that I'm talking about. I mean, it's real bad basalt rock everywhere around this big pasture. And throughout the pasture, there's a few basalt rocks here and there. But out around the border of it, I mean, it's almost like a corral around this thing. So it's about probably 400 yards wide by about 250 yards long, however you want to put it. But anyway, it's a big oval-shaped deal. And on the one side, there was a fence. But that horse took him in that little bit of snow and grass and was just racing. And that kid is hung up good. He's wearing crepe-soled boots, and he had on a set of them wide bell-bottom stirrups.
Oof.
His foot was not coming out of there. I'm assuming it was because his spurs were tight on his foot. And he's just a dragging behind that horse, and the whole time he's dragging, I'm thinking he is going to get his head bashed out on those lava rocks as soon as that horse goes through. And all I could see was that he was going to die. And we're all running trying to catch up, but I mean, that horse is just flying around the perimeter of this pasture. And he makes it about a lap and a half around that pasture. And I don't know how it happened. That foot finally popped loose. And the kid kind of rolls around there for a second. And he's holding his wrist. And I'm thinking, well, I'm glad it was just his wrist and, not something else.
Yeah,
so I thought for sure he'd lose his brains on a rock,
Oh, yeah.
He walks up to me and he says, of course, he's got one boot on, one off. He says, my hand sure hurts. He says, I think I hit my hand when that horse was running. He says, I think his foot come back and caught my hand. I was like, wow. I said, kid, you're just lucky to be alive right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was nuts. Probably the spookiest little thing I've seen happen ever.
Boy, I've had my foot hung up once or twice, and it is not a good feeling. And I told you before about that little dun horse that I had, and when he hung up with me, and that little horse could run now. I mean, he was running quarter bred, and he could dang sure run. And luckily, I got kicked loose after about 3 strides, so no damage done, but the boy, he went crashing through the gates after I got kicked loose. I mean, it would have been a bad news situation if I hadn't got kicked loose.
Yeah, I've hung up and dragged on a saddle bronc horse a time or two. Really bad one time. I mean, to the point where I was dragged about 5 or 6 jumps before my foot come loose. But
yeah,
never kicked me. I mean, I think his front feet might have hit me a little bit, but it didn't break anything. Just dragged my head through the muddy sand, you know, and my ears and face and mouth were full of muddy sand, but other than that, it didn't hurt anything, you know. And of course, in an arena, it's a little more controlled than out doctoring calves. But,
oh yeah. Yeah, they can't really get a real good head of steam on you.
Right. Yeah, another, let's see, I was trying to think of stories. Yeah, there was one that happened to me, and it's not a real exciting story, but it happened out in Idaho, Nevada.
Okay.
This is a story about a calving out a bunch of heifers for Tim Duffarina over there at Quinn River Ranch. So when I come over to that area, I'd left the reservation up in Crow, Montana, and he had basically said, yeah, I think you'll get along here okay. And the kid that was working for him, I thought was going to still be there when I went to work there. Well, the kid quit just right the next day that I got there. The kid quit. And, so it was just me and Tim. And I thought, well, Tim will be helping me. You know, this won't be too big a deal. It's time to calve out all these red Angus heifers. Well, and Tim had about 1,000 head of cows or something like that out there on the desert as well that we were supposed to check on once in a while. But mostly I was calving out the heifers. Every once in a while, we'd have one that would have a calf stuck inside it. And Tim didn't have anything to cut those calves out of them with. And I had been kind of schooled by Scott Satterthwaite in how to C-section a cow, so I knew a little bit about it. But Tim was like, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll just run them to town, you know. And so most of them calves, and I say most because it was easily 70% of those heifers that I would have to pull the calves out. And one day I was riding out, and I was just bringing everything in for the night, and there was this little heifer down in a draw. And she kind of had her tail up a little bit, and I rode up closer, and I could see that she had something oozing out of her, so I thought, well, she's either trying to calve or she's had a dead calf or something like that. We'll see what's happening, because she didn't look quite right. You know how they are. And so I gave her about an hour and come back and checked on her, and there was no feet sticking out or nothing, but there was still stuff oozing out of her. And this time she looked like she had a contraction. And I was like, well, it's been an hour, there should be something showing, you know. And I can see what looks like bloody brown stuff coming out of her. And I really needed to get things moving, so I rode up and roped her, and it didn't take her but just a second to settle down. And I reached up inside of this cow with no glove on or nothing, and stink. And I knew right away we had a dead calf in there, you know. And so I got all this.
That smell is unmistakable.
Yeah, you got me. It was kind of like putting your arm in a nasty old toilet, you know. It was disgusting. So I pulled my hand out of there, and I knew right away we had to get rid of the vet or she's going to die, you know. But that stink was stuck to my arm. And I was like, well, you know, I gotta go get this washed off. So I go up to the house, and I tell Tim what's going on, and I go to wash off my arm, and this stuff just, I mean, it's soaked into my clothes and stinking, and I get it washed off good, and Tim calls me and is like, well, I can take it from here. You've been going for, you know, 16 to 18 hours a day. I'm going to let you just take a nap, you know. So I take a shower and scrub, and I finally used Clorox bleach on it because I couldn't get anything else to take the smell off my arm.
Yeah.
So, I'm not kidding you. The next day, I had spots all up and down my arm. I was like, oh, crap, what have I done, you know? Now, a lot of people don't know where Idaho, Nevada's at unless they've been to the Burning Man Festival. That's where that
Well,
place is located.
Okay, so it's so it'd be like north of Winnemucca then.
Yep, north of Winnemucca. I want to say I think we were 70 plus miles out of Winnemucca.
Okay,
well,
yeah, so you're...
I had a... Go ahead.
That's a long ways from nowhere.
Yeah, so when I started seeing spots going up and down my arm, I was like, oh, what have I done? I was scared to death for about 2 or 3 hours. I'm like, oh no.
You gave yourself Ebola.
Yeah. I'm gonna die. I got the chicken pox. But anyway, it was just kind of funny. I lived through that deal just fine. I had lots of work to do, so I put on my shirt and I went to work, and I didn't say nothing to anybody. I just put my head down and worked, and it went away. Thank God.
Well, I've been around some stuff like that where because that's kind of your nature where if you're working on a cow outfit, whether it be a big outfit, a big circle outfit like you were on, or a feedlot, whatever, if you're really hooked into the job, you don't want to take off to go to the doctor more than anything, because you don't want anybody giving you shit for going to the doctor. So I've known guys that had I think it was one guy had a staph infection or something. He's like, oh, it's just a spider bite. It'll heal up. Well, that doesn't look like a spider bite. You might ought to go get that checked out. And, of course, they go, oh, you better not be calling me a puss if I do. Well, I'm still going to call you a puss, but you might ought to go check that out.
Yeah, that's about the way it is, too. I had a little horse. I was telling you earlier, one of the horses in my string on that Spanish ranch, they called him Nightmare. And I'd been there a couple or 3 years by the time the boss cut this horse to me. And so I don't know how old he was, but he was a curly wolf to be around. I mean, he was sketchy, just quiver and look at you and snort, and always had his head cocked to the side. And when you went to throw a saddle on him, you just about had to tie up a leg, but you could sneak it onto his back, And I got that saddle cinched up, and I asked, what is he, And he says, well, he says they started him a few years back. And I had known how they started them horses. I was telling you about Bomber. I rode that Bomber to start him. Old Bomber, they had basically all the cowboys that were working there at the time, which was about 7 guys, they kind of lined up, and one would get on Bomber, and he would buck him off. And then another one would climb on him to see if he could ride him, and he would buck him off. And Scott told me he bucked off 8 bronc riders before somebody got him rode. So that ought to give you an idea how that horse bucked. And when he told me that these guys started that Nightmare horse, I was like, holy shit, they named him Bomber. And then they named this one Nightmare. What's he going to be?
Oh, yeah.
So I told the kid that was with me, his name was Ryan. Gosh, I'm still friends with him to this day. Anyway, this kid, he's a rancher over in Weiser, Idaho now. Real good cat.
Oh, okay.
He says, I'll go with you, and we'll go out and gather this bunch of cows. And so we head out there, and it's a pretty chilly morning, and that horse has got like you were saying, a ball under his blanket. I mean, just humped up the whole time. And I'm thinking, he'll loosen up. He hasn't bucked yet. And most horses, if they're going to pitch, especially cold back like that, they'll pitch right away,
Oh, yeah.
So,
first time you ask them to catch a trot or anything, they're gonna fire.
Right. And I was kind of like you when you were talking about that perching mare. I kind of kept him bent just a little bit. And I felt pretty good about things. And we just kept on a jog, and we got about, anybody who knows that place knows that the airport turns out into their outside country. So I got clear through the airport, and I was just getting ready to head out, and that horse bogged his head and started jumping with me. And he was bucking really high.
Mm-hmm.
About every third jump, he'd toss his head in the air. And I had this habit at the time, but when a horse was bucking, I wouldn't grab him. I wouldn't grab leather. I would just hang on to the reins and I kind of lift on those reins like you do a saddle bronc horse. And the saddle I was riding had a set of squaw tits on it. And so, you know, with them bucking rolls, I wasn't having too hard of a time, but he kept lifting me over the front end every time he'd pitch that head up. And it was every third jump. It was 2 big jumps, and then the third jump, he'd jump and throw his head straight in the air. And we went for about 8 jumps like this. On about the 9th jump, so this is about the 3rd or 4th time I start to try to bend him around. So I bend him around to the right, and I'm bucking back towards Ryan, and he does it again, but this time, I mean, he really put some effort into it, and he got me clear out over his front end, and smacked my nose with his head, and bronc right over. I mean, it was done.
Oh, yeah.
He broke my nose bigger than shit.
I had one kind of similar to that. I was looking at a stud horse over at Hasty, Colorado. My former brother-in-law I knew a guy over there that had this stud horse that he was wanting to unload pretty cheap, and he was highbrow cat, freckles playboy, highbrow hickory, freckles playboy, smart little Lena, and I mean just any sort of cowbred horse that you could think of, it was on the papers. I mean, so not only were they bred well, but they were real close up. I mean, I think his granddaddy was highbrow hickory, and his great granddaddy was freckles playboy, and I mean, just like I said, just all the breeding you could want on that thing. And he had been started as a 2-year-old, and then just turned out on mares. And so I went over to look at him, and he was out in the middle of a pasture, and I didn't bring a horse over with me or anything to go gather him up. And of course, it was like a 60-acre tract. Wasn't anything, no big country or anything, but I ended up getting him caught, and out in the middle of the pasture, I got him kind of. They had a set of corrals that were not, just kind of old corrals, but they weren't really fully enclosed. But I got him in a small enough space to where I could get him cornered and put a halter on him. And so I was like, well, I could trailer him down to somebody's house where they've got a round pen, but I was like, well, I could just get on him out here, and which. Not really a great idea, but it seemed okay at the time. It seemed like a lot less work, so I'll just get on him here. And I saddle him up, and he doesn't throw a fit, nothing. I suck him in two with that cinch. I always, that old man Doc that I was riding colts for, he always showed me the trick is, you get your front cinch kind of, not tight, but just kind of snug, and then to kind of get them to exhale, just go ahead and kind of saw them in two with that back cinch, get them to exhale, and then you'll find out real quick how cinchy they are. And I did that, and he had a big old grass belly on him, and no issue at all. Wasn't cinchy, wasn't pitching a fit, and I thought, this might be a pretty good deal for me. And so I stepped on him. Nothing happened. Then I took my spurs off because I didn't want to cause any wreck. And I usually just wear spurs all the time, especially when I'm riding a colt for somebody, just because I want to kind of throw everything I can at him in the short amount of time I've got him there. So, but I didn't have spurs on him, and he didn't offer to do anything, and I mean, and literally nothing. He offered to do nothing. I was not getting him to step out. He just stood there, kind of flicked one ear back, but he didn't look real angry or anything. He was just kind of standing there. And so I'm trying to pull his hand. I could pull his nose around all the way to my knee, but he wouldn't move. And so I was like, well, I guess, but he hadn't been hadn't been touched in about 4 years. So you knew he was going to buck. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind he was going to buck. So I think I was riding a little Wade Tree saddle, and it had a pair of squat hits on it. So I get sat down, and I just grabbed the rein, and I just popped him on the ass, and same thing, you know, he kind of jumped straight in the air and bogged his head and just had a lot of drop to him. And he was, you know, 6-year-old stud horse. Wasn't super tall, but just thick built horse. And he buried his head. And so I was the same way. I wasn't grabbing leather. I was just, you know, I'm just hauling back on the reins, you know, just like you said, just bronc style, just lifting. And he threw his head, and of course I was way out over the front, and he popped me, and I had to go to the chiropractor after that because I couldn't hardly move. And my old chiropractor, he'd kind of knew me a little bit by this point, and he said, "You really need to do some stretching if you're going to keep riding these types of horses." And he said, "It looked like you just landed like a sack of potatoes." And I said, "Well, I think I did, because I remember seeing some stars, and I had a big old fat lip, and you know, I didn't break my nose on that one because he hit more of my lips than my nose, but you know, I had coon eyes and a big old, looked like a cross between a raccoon and a platypus, but." And then my wife kind of stepped into the situation, and she said, "I don't think you need that stud horse." And I said, "But I could sell him for a lot of money right now." And she said, "It is not worth it. You are not buying that damn stud horse." So I never bought that stud horse.
they put the kibosh on a lot of our shenanigans, don't they?
Oh, I know it. They're and then it's usually for the better. You know, you might get a little pissed off at them at the time, and then you look back at it, and she's probably right. That stud horse probably would have killed me at some point. But boy, I could have made a lot of money on him. But yeah. But the bad thing is with a stud horse, you really kind of want them to handle nice, so people know that they're breeding to a good horse. But in the long run, I don't think it was worth it. But that was one of those. Man, you wish you could have got a hold of that horse at a 2-year-old deal, or even a 4-year-old, but. Yeah, it was it's just kind of one of those, it was just a wasted opportunity.
So I just remembered another one, an old buddy of mine that I'd cowboyed with on the Crow Reservation, and these Crow boys are all bronc riders, by the way. I've not met one of them yet that worked around me over there in Crow Agency that wasn't just a damn good bronc rider.
Yeah.
The thing is, them Crow boys aren't little. They're not little by any stretch of the word. Most of them are over 6 foot tall and big, broad-shouldered men, you know, and I mean tough. And,
the definition of a BFI.
Yeah. One of them, he was so big that I had cut him a string of horses, and he had a pretty decent saddle. It wasn't real fancy, you know, it wasn't a common handmade kind of saddle, but it was something you'd go to the store and buy that was just a good buck, you know. And
good factory made one.
Yeah, and old Mark, he tried his best to pad them horses right, but he was just so big. I didn't have enough horses to keep under him because he just sore him because he was such a big man. Of course, it might not have just been that he was a big dude. It might have been, too, that maybe there was something awry with the way that he set a horse. I don't know, but, man, when I had to let him go, he was mad. I was a little nervous, you know. Mark, he's a big dude. His head's probably the size of most 2 people's heads, you know.
Well, and those Indian guys, they're not one to shy away from a fight either.
No. Oh, heck no. That's just normal for them. But anyway, on with my little story. This friend of mine, Paul, he's actually, I believe he's second to the chairman of the Crow tribe now. And Paul was a good cowboy. He just hung in there, you know, and he stayed with it till he got good at it. He he still can rope really good. Over the years, he just keeps getting wolfier and wolfier all the time. I think he's probably in his early 40s right now, and he's getting a little better with horses, but the only trouble is he doesn't really have anybody to teach him much, you know. And he really liked hanging around me and the cow boss that we had at the time, Dan Myers. He just liked everything we did, and we got around some of the better ropers in the U.S. Because Dan Myers knew some guys out of California and Nevada. And the one, his name was Dave Weaver, and he'd come up there and he'd put on roping clinics and stuff like that, and everybody would invite him to their brandings, you know, and Dave come and helped us for about, I don't want to say a week or 2 weeks. And we were in the heat of branding, you know, which seemed like when I was working for Dan, we were always branded. We were constantly branding cattle. We had about 4,000 mother cows, and I don't know how many yearlings that run through that crow country, so old Paul, he got to be a fixture, and I really liked him. So when I went to Idaho, Nevada, I called up Paul and I said, we need help. It's only me here, and Tim, he doesn't seem to be helping out a lot. I know he's busy trying to manage the place and everything, but I said, I need help. I need somebody who's good help. Would you come down and give me a hand? And so Paul says, yeah, I'll come look at it, you know. So he gathers up his wife, and he makes the drive all the way down to Winnemucca and then north up to Idaho. And he gets there, and he's helping me for about a day or so. And I have a little Angus cow that couldn't push the calf out again, and so I run the head catch, and I'm trying to pull this calf out of her, and I says, Paul, I can't get her pulled. And we're going to have to get her out of this chute. And you know how when they'll pinch that nerve in their back, you can't pull that calf out of them. And so they'll get paralyzed and they'll go down sometimes. Well, she went down on me, and I couldn't get her up. Paul and I, we pulled and pushed and moved things around. And even though that chute had a deal that you could open up the side, we couldn't get her out of there. She was done. And so I told Paul, I said, go get the pistol from the pickup. I said, she's toast.
Yeah.
And so he goes out to the truck, and for whatever reason, he decides he's going to look at the boss's gun. And I didn't know about this till he told me about it. But Paul's in there. He's looking this pistol over, and it's an old, I want to say like a Ruger single six.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, he's looking this gun over, and I'm sitting there looking at this heifer and thinking she's gonna die, whether he shoots her or not. And pretty quick I hear blam, this loud pop, and I'm like, what the hell? And so I get up from the heifer and I walk outside. It's about 0 degrees outside. Oh, Paul, he's got this bunch of black across his face.
Oh, shit.
And I'm all, what the hell? What are you doing? He says, well, I was looking at this gun, and it went off. Like, holy shit. I said, what did you do? He says, I was just looking at that gun, that's all. And it went off. I'm like, you didn't think it was loaded? He's like, I didn't know it was loaded, man. We go to the house after we get the cow out of that deal, and we get her killed, you know, we go back to the house, and I'm like, Paul, how are you doing? And he says, man, I still can't hear anything. He says, I can hear you out of the one ear, but I can't hear anything out of that ear. I'm like, man, you burnt near killed yourself. I says, I'm sure glad you didn't die along with that heifer.
Oh, man. That's,
so anyway,
I'll bet that was a little unnerving. Oh, man.
He's a pretty handy cowboy, but he didn't know anything about pistols. I don't know if he'd never seen one or what, but...
Yeah, that's, of course, one of the first things you learn is every gun is loaded. And, that's why...
Yeah, I just never put any thought into it, because them guys on the res, I mean, they hunt all the time. They're out there killing mule deer and killing whitetails, you know, and they even have a bunch of bison on that place that they'll go up there and shoot bison, you know. So I figured he knew everything that he'd need to know about running and grabbing a pistol so he could kill this cow, because she ain't going to be saved, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, gosh dang it. What a spooky moment. But anyways, that Paul, he went back to the Crow Reservation. He ended up not getting hired to help me. And he went on to do bigger and better things with his life. And now I think he's running a herd of cows for the Crows. But
well, good.
Yeah, he's a good cat. Like I said, getting to be a better roper all the time, and really getting to be quite a horse person.
That's pretty neat.
Those kids on the Crow Reservation, I mean, they grow up on the back of a horse, and a lot of them end up being pretty good racehorse riders and stuff like that. Of course, they get too big before too long. And a lot of them can ride a bucking horse. Not too many of them that I ever met were real great horsemen. There's one by the name of Marty. He does it. You'll see him once in a while running around the country with Sam Redding. Sam, we won some ropings up there doing some fancy loop contests. There's some. That old Marty, he is a roper now. The guys out in Owyhee are known to be some pretty good ropers. And when Marty he shows up with Sam Redding, I guarantee you they'll take their money. Him and Sam are that good of ropers. He is one wolfy roper, and Sam's the same way. I remember watching Sam ride out of so when we would gather cattle in Montana, we'd hold them in a road deer like you were talking about, where we'd put up a bunch of panels. And then of course we'd brand out of those panels. One day we're helping Sam Redding brand, and a calf got back from us that needed to be branded. And on top of those Bighorn Mountains, there's these little rocky draws that start out pretty shallow, and then they go really deep, really fast, and they drop off into the middle of nowhere, you know. And you don't want a cow running down those, because you'll lose her for sure. And anyway, this calf, he goes running out there, and Sam's horse went to the right-hand part of the draw, and the calf went to the left. And Sam roped that calf running hard to the left. And he's a big calf. He's probably about 450, 500 pounds. And he flips that rope over his head and dallies in the blink of an eye. And flopped that calf over. I mean, it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I mean, it's no wonder old Sam wins those ropings all the time, because, I mean, he can rope. Oh, my gosh. Cowboyed all over California and Nevada and blah, 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 you know. But he landed over there in Fort Smith, Montana. And that's where I met him. They'd have me rope with him when I go to those fancy ropings. Tim and Marty had let me rope with them. One day I was at a roping with them, and had a big bunch of steers that we were roping for this competition, and I don't remember what kind of loop I threw on that cow. All I remember is when I took my turns, that calf was running away from me. And the deal was that these ropings, you couldn't lope your horse until after you got your cow roped. I always just tried to keep my horse at a jog at the most. Well, I've never had much trouble taking my turns. I've always been able to let that rope run through my hand and take my turns. Well, that calf was running away from me, and I was trying to keep short, you know, and started stacking my turns on my saddle horn, and one of my dallies popped over my saddle horn, and it broke my little finger slicker than snot. I mean, broke it right in half. And, of course, they don't want to turn loose or anything. I went ahead and finished our whole deal and went back there, and I still had to rope again that day. Took and splinted my finger up and tied it all up, because, I mean, I'm roping with Sam and Marty. Hey, I gotta hold up my end of the bargain, you know. So I finished out the day with that finger that was busted in half. But, that was a fun bunch of guys up in Montana. Old Dean Dell.
I bet.
That's a super crazy good roper there. We used to brand with people all over the country up there. There was a branding we had kind of, I want to say it was between Wyola and Fort Smith. And it was still kind of wet outside, and Dean Delp was there, and I think Marty He Does It was there, and Dave Weaver was there, and along with Gwen Turnbull, and I remember Dean would wait for anybody to drag a calf by him, and he would always be on the left-hand hip of that calf. And remember Kenny was talking about throwing a figure eight on those calves?
Yeah.
And he says, I've never seen anybody throw a figure eight on those heels. Well, Kenny has seen me throw a figure eight on those heels, and I learned it from Dean. And what he would do is he would throw that loop straight down on the calf.
Okay.
And what it would do is it would slap him on the back, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then it would curl around from either side. And when it would come tight, it would be in a figure eight around that calf. And and that's something that if you talk to Tom Hotzen, he calls it the karate chop.
Oh.
And that karate chop is how I healed calves for a lot of years. I've even had people make me get off my horse because they didn't like it. They didn't like it healed that way. Yeah. But it was really dead on for me for the most part. Once in a while, if I didn't position myself right, it wouldn't come out right. And every time it would figure eight those calves in the back end. And if you had somebody who didn't understand how it worked, well, they couldn't even take it off of the calf properly, and it'd just be a mess, you know. But if you knew what you were doing, what it does is it pinches the nerve across the top of that calf's back, and it makes it 10 times easier to hold a calf down because it's laying across that nerve that runs across their hips.
Huh.
It's kind of a stiff deal, but yeah, that's where I learned that was Dean Delp would just sit there in one place, and every time somebody dragged a calf by him, of course we hadn't and healed everything, and he would throw that karate chop and snap that figure eight on him, and man, he'd do that all the time. It looked so cool to me, so I determined I was going to learn it. And there was one day I roped with Tommy Hotzen, and I never had to get off of my horse once because every time we roped a cow, I was throwing that figure eight on her. He never complained though, because it was easy enough to hold her down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat.
It's a little bit different vaquero shot, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll wrap it up for today. I think we've got a good episode on our hands, and I was going to tell you, you did receive one point of criticism that was kind of unanimous with people that I talked to. Are you ready for a little constructive criticism?
Absolutely.
Well, your face does not match your voice, is what everybody said. He said you have aged way too well, because everybody thought we'd look really grizzled and old, and then they see your picture and they said, well, that face doesn't match the voice. So that's the only criticism you've got so far. And I don't know how you change that. So
what you need to tell them is that my wife is about 7 years younger than me, and that keeps a man young.
Yep, there you go. That is honest to God the only criticism you've received on your episode so far is your face doesn't match your voice. And like I said, I don't know how you fix it besides maybe methamphetamine. That'd be about the only way to fix it, I think. So
I didn't start drinking any alcohol or anything like that until I was about 36, 37 years old.
Oh, okay.
That's the honest truth. Yeah. Yeah, and I know that's a little strange, but I didn't ever drink a drop because my grandfather always told me, he says the only really ugly wrecks he had seen with people riding bucking horses was when guys were drunk. And so I determined I wasn't going to drink. And I never did. I mean, I might, once in a while, long hot day, I might have a beer, but it was very, very uncommon for me. It was like once a year. And so I
Huh.
attribute that to a lot of it. I lived a really clean life when I was younger. Haven't ever really chewed tobacco or smoked cigarettes or anything like that. And
Well, see, I'm the opposite. I think I looked like I was about 40 when I went to college at 18. Everybody thought I was just the weird old guy that came back to, had a midlife crisis and went back to school. But I was only 18. I started getting gray hair when I was 17 is when I think I found the first one, and I'm pretty well salt and pepper by now. And hell, I'll be 34 here in a couple months, and but I don't look a day over 50, so.
That's funny. Yeah.
Well, Scott, I appreciate your time, and we're definitely going to do it again. Like I said, I think we got something pretty cool on our hands here, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, I sure enjoyed visiting with you, Matt. I enjoy your stories as well. And, we'll have to do this again. I still have quite a list of little experiences that have happened over the years, and some of it's interesting and some of it's maybe a little blasé, but people can sort through it, and maybe they'll find a little bit of history that they can wrap their mind around and enjoy.
Well, I think it's just it's a good deal that you get some of us guys from different backgrounds that we still do the same things, but swap stories about how you do it, what you're riding, your methods and everything. And I think the more we can kind of showcase why people do things a certain way, it makes more sense in the long run of things. But the cowboy world's not very big, but boy, it's as diverse as they come. That's for sure.
Certainly it is.
So, but.
All right.
I think we're gonna call her good there. I guess I forgot to do this last time, but I always sign off the show with "Move your ass, we're burning daylight." But since you're the guest, I'll let you sign us off.
Move your asses, folks. We're burning daylight.
Thanks, Scott. I sure appreciate it.
All right, you too. Bye-bye now.
We'll see you later. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, folks, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the show. Scott, thanks again for coming on. It's always a good time. I've enjoyed it every single time. So we're gonna do some more, and we got some other ideas in the works. Nothing set in stone, but we've got some ideas that we kicked around, and I think we're on to something pretty cool. So anyhow, give Scott's silver work a look over at Scott Jason Hall on Facebook. I don't think he's taking any friend requests right now, but all of his stuff is looks like it's made public, so you can go check it out. He does really, really cool, beautiful silver work, and he's just he's a stand-up dude. I gotta give Erin Martinez a shout out for that, because she sent me in his direction, and I really feel like I've gained a pretty good friend out of the whole deal. So that was really cool, and I look forward to doing another one. Do another one with his Uncle Kenny, and it's just it's amazing the cool people you can meet when you're looking. So anyways, on that note, go follow me on Facebook, Matt McKinley, at MakerMac85 on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and then follow all the podcast pages, Burning Daylight, on Facebook and YouTube, and at Move Your Ass, MOVEYERASS, on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Go check out my Facebook, or my website, rather, burning-daylight.com. Shoot me an email over there if you got any questions or requests for topics or guests, whatever. It's Matt at burning-daylight.com. You can check out a few of the blog posts. I still got one in the making I need to put up, and it will come up here at some point. And then the store, is over there, and yeah, we got some cool stuff going to be happening. Right. We got a couple hats for sale up there at the moment. You can check them out, get them ordered if you want one, and we'll be releasing some new products here in the near future. So, yeah, go make sure you rate, review, share, all that good stuff. Subscribe, get the word out, and yeah. On that note, y'all have a good weekend and be safe. Don't get too crazy. Be a long weekend, and we'll catch you back here on Monday. But I got some more podcasts to edit, so move your ass. We're burning daylight.